We're nearly 3 years into the pandemic, and we're about 3 months into the kids' big school experience. Who'd have thought that the new normal wouldn't feel normal at all? So she's currently doing blended learning at her big school right now. They only go on premises 2 days a week. When they're there, the kids still need to wear masks, practice social distancing, and not to share food and materials with others. For the rest of the school days, they stay at home and do what they call independent learning tasks. Funny label, this so called independent learning. I mean, how can you really expect that from 5 and 6-year-old kids? Some kids aren't even potty trained at that time. So it's weird that they should somehow be able to learn about, place values and pronouns by themselves. Students grade 4 and younger have a learning assistant who could help the kids. Supposedly the learning assistant should be the one to navigate the learning management system and submit outputs. But when you take a look at what these learning tasks entail, the kids need so much more help than simply having a tech guy by their side. What they really need is a substitute teacher. You can't just be there to click buttons. You really have to assume a lot of the teaching responsibilities. Since I'm doing mainly consultancy work these days, I'm thankful that I have the flexibility to be my kid's learning assistant. But it is a tasking responsibility. I have to do the prep work, like collating all the tasks and activities that they have to do, ensuring that the tasks are done according to schedule, and that outputs are submitted on time. I've ranted about how crazy this whole pandemic schooling experience has been. Kinder last year was a hellish experience for me, and unfortunately, the riot continues. If during kinder I only had to allocate a couple of hours a day, this time I'm finding myself devoting at least 6 hours a day for the kids' schooling. That is a full-time job, 6 hours a day. And on top of my, actual jobs, it's a huge struggle for me to manage. Anyway, it appears that, private schools really are struggling to get this online and blended learning thing just right, even for, their bourgeois clientele like us. But I understand that even the best schools still have no definitive expertise on how to handle this, pandemic schooling malarkey. This has been exasperating for everyone. But now let me zoom out to other concerns, because what I don't get is this idea being mouthed by some that, the idea that it's your kid, your responsibility, even when it comes to formal education. Ewan ko kung sino yung nagpasimuno nito. But I think that's some effed up gaslighting bullcrap. If we're supposed to be the ones that still have to be in charge of our kids' education once they reach school age, then why the heck do we have an educational system in the first place? Why do we have licensure requirements for teachers? And why do we have accreditation requirements for schools? Sure, we do have to get involved and be the ones to decide for our kids until they reach legal age. But by no means am I deflecting our parental responsibilities. We should provide for our kids, care for them at home, and give them the resources for schooling. And we're the ones who should still instill values and discipline in them. That's our job as parents. But to expect us to be the teachers for formal academic disciplines, that's where I find some, messed up crap about that whole idea. We aren't education degree holders or licensed teachers. We're not subject matter experts in everything. There's a reason why there's an educational system being ran by the state. And there are, a host of related industries dedicated to education, right? Kung ganun lang din, ina-expect kami na bahala sa pagtuturo ng mga anak namin, hindi sana nag-homeschooling na lang kami. Ipasara na lang lahat ng schools, public and private, ipamudmud na lang yung education budget sa parents, or give us, hefty tax breaks. Baka pwede rin makahingi ng confidential funds, para makagastos ako ng hindi nyo nalalaman. Anyway, what probably makes this worse is that I've encountered teachers in schools who push this idea as if they're comfortable deflecting responsibility already and ultimately declaring their roles in society moot. What's funny is that private schools who somehow push this idea have the gall to still charge full price when it comes to tuition. Now, I'm not saying that this is my kid's school. Uh, I do know a lot of other schools and other parents who send their kids to private schools. It, it's just that there's this idea that's becoming prevalent these days, na kami na bahala. I know some exclusive schools who still have that uppity, you need us, we don't need you mindset. Never mind if their student population dwindled over the past couple of years, and I don't know when they'll be able to recover. But as far as parents are concerned, I know some parents, friends and colleagues and acquaintances of mine who share similar sentiments when it comes to lamenting this whole situation. It's tough to take over a kid's learning and handle all the other stresses of home and work. Okay, other parents who have full-time jobs wish for full-time face-to-face learning to return. And that's perfectly understandable. Unless you can afford a private tutor, it's tough for their kids to cope with blended learning. Walang magbabantay, walang kayang mag-fulfill ng substitute teacher task. Kung nagtatrabaho sila pareho, I get their plight. Considering how tough finances are these days, the typical middle-class family really can't afford to be a single-income household. That's the reality of things. This is why I really don't appreciate people shaming parents who both work full-time by labeling them uncaring and irresponsible when it comes to their kids' education. Not everyone has that luxury. And about the return to full-time face-to-face learning, we're actually bracing for that, considering the DepEd announced that it would be the case for everyone by November. But private schools apparently petitioned the DepEd to let them continue offering blended learning schemes, and it was only last week that the DepEd announced its ruling on the petition, and they've allowed private schools to proceed as they see fit. So, pwede pa rin mag-blended learning and hindi mag-full-time face-to-face 5 days a week ang private schools. Private schools, eh. There are various pros and cons to this, and it really depends on a family-specific situation. For our case, going by the status quo, which is 2 days a week on premises, does have some benefits. We only go to school twice a week. Potential COVID exposure is kept to a minimum. Transport costs are basically halved. But the major disadvantage is that I will have to continue being the kid substitute teacher, which is, as I've said, taxing. Now, the problem is returning to full-time face-to-face, or starting. In the case of my kid, it's her first time to really experience full-time schooling. Face-to-face learning doesn't seem to allay any of these concerns. I'll still have to ferry the kid daily to school, which means allocating the whole morning for the usual rituals and the commute. And I also have to fetch her in the afternoon and figure out how to be productive in between. Since we downsized our family fleet during the pandemic, we're now even considering getting an additional car should the kid be required to go to school daily. So that's another concern, that's another expense to worry about. Either way, since it's more practical for us to have one parent to have a bit more flexibility to take charge of all of these concerns. Now, sad to say, I've all but given up on the idea of rekindling a corporate career. Ultimately, this whole thing just highlights the dismal state of education in our country. It underscores this disparity between public and private schools, and children of lower income parents and middle class parents and rich parents. To put things into perspective, one thing that's striking is that we, the Borghese, still have the luxury of choice, considering the circumstances, while others, especially the lower income parents, simply don't have any choice in the matter.